At my parents' anniversary, I found my seat on the street with the garbage cans and the sign. For losers. My dad smiled. We think you don't count. I smiled, took my gift and walked out without a words. A few minutes later they turned pale and screamed. That night they came to. My parents always had a warped sense of humor. It started with little things when I was a kid, jokes at my expense at dinner, forgetting birthdays, pretending to be shocked that I was still living at home when I was only 16. They'd laugh, pat each other on the back, say things like, "We're just building character, Caleb." I don't know when it stopped being funny. Probably never did. Their anniversary was always a big deal in our house. They threw this obnoxious party every year, inviting the same circle of friends and relatives who pretended to like each other long enough to sip boxed wine and compliment my mom's casserole. I was usually just the kid who helped set up the chairs, made sure everyone had enough ice, and stayed out of the way. But this year was different. I wasn't a kid anymore. I had a job, I had saved some money, and I had finally bought something for them that wasn't on sale. A brand new pickup truck. Midnight blue, spotless, top of the line. I had it parked a block away, ready to be unveiled after dinner. A big red ribbon on the hood. I didn't tell anyone. Not even my grandparents, who had come from Arizona. I wanted it to be a surprise. I arrived at the party a little late on purpose, hoping to skip the early madness. As I pulled up the driveway, I saw the decorations, balloons, cheap string lights, one of those fold-up banners that said, "Happy 30th," in glittering gold letters. But what caught my eye was something new. A folding chair set up in the middle of the front lawn, next to the garbage cans. A cardboard sign taped to the back that read, "For losers." At first I thought it was some kind of prank that had nothing to do with me. Until I saw the smiles. The sideways glances. My dad yelled, "There he is! We saved you a seat!" My mom laughed so hard she had to lean against the porch railing. "You probably don't count, do you?" I just stood there holding her gift, a little box with the keys in it and a picture of the truck. I smiled. Didn't say a word. I just walked right past everyone to the house, put the box on the table inside, and walked out without looking back. They were still laughing. But about 3 minutes later, I heard it. A scream. Then another. I stopped on the sidewalk and turned around. My parents had opened the box. They saw the keys. The note inside said, "Happy anniversary. It's parked on 4th Street. Hope you like it." By the time they reached the end of the driveway, their faces had gone pale. My mom dropped the note. My dad started yelling something, but I couldn't hear him. People had gathered around. Then they both screamed at the same time. That night, they came to my apartment. Not to apologize. Not to talk. Just loud banging on the door, my dad yelling through it. Less than a minute later, my grandparents pulled up outside. They weren't invited either. I didn't open the door right away. My dad was banging on it like he was going to break it down, calling my name over and over. I could hear my mom in the background telling him to calm down, but not really meaning it. I let it go on for a while. Not out of spite, but because I wanted them to stand there and sit in it for a second. I knew what they were feeling: panic, embarrassment, confusion. But I didn't owe them any comfort. Not after what they had done. Finally, I opened the door. Just enough to look into their eyes. My dad's face was flushed, like he'd run 5 miles. My mom was clutching the empty gift box like it could explain something. They didn't say hello. They didn't ask how I was. First thing out of my dad's mouth. "Where is it?" I didn't answer. I just opened the door wide enough to let them in. Just as they stepped over the threshold, my grandparents' car pulled into the parking lot. I hadn't called them. I hadn't told anyone. But there they were. As if they knew this moment was coming. My grandfather didn't even stop. He walked right past my parents without acknowledging them, patted me on the back once, and walked into the living room like it was his house. My grandmother came in more slowly. She looked at my mom for a second, then at me, and just shook her head. "Where's the truck?" my dad asked again, louder this time. I told him the truth. I'd parked it a block from the house, on the corner near the old diner. Still had the bow on it. Inside, keys under the seat. But when I went back after the party, it was gone. Just an oil slick where the tires had been. I hadn't left the title in. I'm not that stupid. It was still locked up in my desk drawer. My dad looked like he was going to explode. He started pacing, pulling at his hair, muttering about calling the cops. My mom stared at the floor, probably realizing how quickly her anniversary gift had disappeared. Grandpa spoke from the couch, not even looking at her. "You think this is about a truck?" Either of them answered. "You humiliated him in front of the whole neighborhood. That was on purpose. The sign, the trash cans, the laughter, all of it." My mother's voice finally broke through. "It was just a joke. We didn't mean to hurt anyone." Grandma cut in. "You've been doing this for years. You think just because he never says anything, he doesn't notice?" The room grew quiet. The kind of quiet where you could hear the air conditioning coming from the hallway. And then Grandpa dropped it. "You might as well tell him now. He deserves it." I looked at them, but neither of my parents spoke. "So Grandma did?" "You should never have been born," she said. "They didn't want you. Not then. Not ever." She didn't say it with pity. Just fact. Like stating the weather. My chest tightened, but I didn't speak. "They tried to get rid of you. Came to us crying about how they weren't ready, how a baby would ruin everything. They had a plan and you weren't part of it." My dad finally said something. "It wasn't like that. We were young and dash." Grandpa cut him off. "Don't twist it. You were 27. Not teenagers. You just didn't want the responsibility." Grandma looked at me again. "We paid for everything. We told them if they gave you up, they'd never see another dollar. So they kept you. Raised you out of obligation, not love." It all hit me at once. Every cold birthday. Every joke at my expense. Every time they acted like my presence was some kind of inconvenience. It all made sense now. "They only kept you because we made them," Grandpa said. "And they've been punishing you ever since." I sat down without noticing. My hands were cold. My mom tried to say something, maybe to soften it, but she couldn't even look me in the eye. And then my grandmother said something that froze the room. "It's not too late to make them feel. You already started. You just haven't finished." I looked up. She wasn't kidding. And neither was I when I said, "Good. Then let's finish." I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of the bed, the light off, the sound of traffic outside mixing with the stories my grandparents had told me. Every memory I had of being their son played like reruns with news subtitles. None of it was an accident. None of it was misunderstood love. Everything was controlled, tolerated, calculated. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel sad. I felt awake. The truck wasn't stolen. I never really left it on 4th Street. It was parked in a private garage across town. It belonged to a friend from work who owed me a favor. We'd even switched license plates. The insurance was untouched, the title never signed. My dad could have called the cops all he wanted, it wouldn't have led anywhere. That was the warm-up. What I planned next would be much harder to undo. Grandpa spent the night on my couch. He'd pulled an old legal pad out of his coat pocket and scribbled while I stared at the ceiling. Around 2 a.m., he slid it across the table to me. A list. Names, contacts, financial trails, and a line at the bottom, "You're more fragile than you appear." He and Grandma had kept records. Not to use. Just in case. They never trusted my parents to do right by me, and they were right not to. The next morning I called my parents and told them I was ready to talk. I told them I would come by the house that evening. They were eager. Desperate, actually. My mother asked if I'd bring the truck. I told her I might. That seemed to be enough. I arrived around 6, the same time as the day before, only this time I didn't have a gift in my hand. Just my cell phone and something folded in my back pocket. They had guests again. Some of the same people from the party. They were clearly trying to put on a show, music playing, food on the counter, like it was still a party. But their smiles were cracked now. As if they were waiting for something to break. I let them wait. When enough people had gathered in the living room, I pulled out the folded papers. Bank statements. Screenshots. Names of people my dad had borrowed money from and never paid back. Lines of credit opened in other people's names. One of them mine. My grandmother helped me pull the reports. "You want to laugh at someone?" I said. "Let's laugh at this." And I passed the papers around. My mom went pale before she even saw what was on them. She knew. She'd signed some of it. Loans. Defaults. A credit card supposedly open for emergencies. I was 16 when it showed up in my name. The room changed. People stopped chewing. Some stood up. A couple walked out. I wasn't finished. I've already sent this to 4 people, including a lawyer and someone from the IRS. You have about 48 hours before this stops being a conversation and starts being an investigation. My dad tried to lunge at me. Grandpa stepped in before he could. He didn't even raise his hand, he just stood there. My dad backed off. I walked out without looking back. Grandma followed. She didn't say much until we got to the car. Then she said, "There's something else we haven't told you." And I knew then that this story was far from over. I didn't ask any questions when Grandma told me there was something else. I just drove. She told me to take the highway out past the edge of town, near the old industrial area. It was the kind of place where people disappear into small units, and no one asks why they never come out. We pulled into a retirement community that looked like it had been forgotten by everyone but the sun. Beige buildings, cracked sidewalks, old blinds that never opened. Unit 12B was in the middle of the row. Grandma knocked once and waited. The door opened slowly, and an older man stood there in jeans and a button-up shirt that still had the dry cleaning tag on it. His face was worn but sharp, as if he hadn't aged so much as been sanded down by time. He looked at me, then at Grandma, and nodded. "You finally brought him," he said. I didn't recognize him, but apparently I was supposed to. "This is Ernest," Grandma said. "Your mother's father." I stood there, caught between confusion and anger. "I thought he was dead." Grandma shook her head. "She told you that." "She told everyone." He stepped aside to let us in. The place was quiet, smelled of old wood and clean paper. No television. Just shelves of folders, stacks of labeled boxes, and a desk with folders arranged in perfect rows. "I stayed away because she made me," Ernest said. "Every time I reached out, she threatened to cut me off completely. Not just with me, but with her mother. I only saw you once from a distance. You were 3. He pointed to a picture frame on the bookshelf. A blurry picture of a child on a park swing. The kind of picture someone takes when they're not allowed to get too close. "I knew they were lying to you," he said. "I just didn't know how deep it went until I got the call from your grandmother last night." He sat down and opened a thick file on the desk. I stepped closer. Inside were copies of old legal documents, financial records, property deeds, things with my name on them. Or close to it. "They used your trust fund to buy their house," he said. "Money that came from my side of the family. It was supposed to be for your future. But they falsified the paperwork. A letter off in your name. Just enough to misfile it." He handed me the deed. There it was, Caleb with a K, not Caleb. "They misspelled it on purpose," Grandma said. "To make sure it couldn't be easily traced. They thought no one would notice." "But you did," I said. Ernest nodded. "And I kept every receipt, every form, every signature. I knew one day you'd come looking." The kicker? They never legally transferred the house out of the trust. They just assumed no one would look. As far as county records were concerned, the property still belonged to the trust set up in my name, even though the money was long gone. "You can't get back what they spent," Ernest said. "But you can take the house. You can take everything associated with it. All you have to do is sign." I sat down slowly, the papers spread out in front of me. It wasn't even a decision. It felt like something that had been done years ago, when they decided I wasn't worth the truth. I signed. The next morning I went to the house. I parked down the street and waited until they left for work. Then I called the locksmith. 10 minutes later I was inside. I changed every lock, every code, and taped a notice on the inside of the front door. "This property is in legal transition. The trustee is now taking control." I didn't leave a name. Just a copy of the paperwork. If they came home and found the locks changed, they wouldn't be able to get in. They'd call the cops, yell about trespassing, claim it was a mistake. But this time, the house wasn't theirs to defend. It was mine. They didn't call me right away. I expected screams, threats, maybe even tears. But they were quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't mean surrender, it means they're planning something. My dad is the kind of guy who plays tough until he finds someone with more power to hide behind. 2 days later, I got a call from a blocked number. I let it go to voicemail. Then another. Then a third. This one left a message. It wasn't them. It was a lawyer. We have been contacted by your parents, Ron and Lisa Withrow, regarding a legal dispute over property ownership. We would like to discuss a possible misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. That word got under my skin. I called Ernest and told him what had happened. He laughed. Really laughed. Good. Let them panic, he said. You want to end this clean? Give them a deadline. Make it public. So that's what I did. That night I uploaded a video. Just a few minutes long. No drama, no shouting. Just me holding the documents, explaining in simple terms what they'd done. How they drained a trust that didn't belong to them, forged a signature, used my identity for years without consent, and then tried to erase me from the picture altogether. I didn't name them in the title, but I tagged the neighborhood group chat, their country club's Facebook page, and a few mutual contacts. The video started out slow. 30 views. Then 100. By morning, it was over 2,000. That afternoon, someone tagged me in a comment under the country club's post. My dad's name had been removed from the board of trustees. By evening, my mom's best friend had posted something cryptic about wolves and pearls, and unfriended her on everything. But it wasn't just the online fallout. The IRS called me. They said someone had opened a report last week that matched a complaint they just received. The fraud division was looking into it. Ernest had filed the original report years ago. Now that it had resurfaced with new evidence, they were finally paying attention. Then came the envelope. Plain, hand-delivered, no return address. Inside was a photograph of me. As a child, no older than 4, sleeping in a hospital bed. I had no memory of it. But on the back of the photo was a date. August 19th, 2004. The same week I was supposed to have been on a family vacation with them in Oregon, according to every story they ever told. I showed it to Grandma. Her face tightened. You had pneumonia. Bad. Almost didn't make it. They left you with us that week and told everyone you were with them. Why would they lie about that? I asked. She didn't answer at first. Then she said, because they weren't in Oregon. They were in Nevada. In a casino. They didn't want to be bothered. They had gambled the last of the trust fund that week. While I was in the hospital bed, my lungs were failing. I didn't sleep that night either. But this time not out of anger. From clarity. They were already socially ruined. Financially, the IRS would come. But I wanted them to feel it personally. Like I had for years. So I called a local realtor. Told her the house was on the market. Cash buyers only. I listed it for less than it was worth. Then I scheduled the open house. On their wedding anniversary. And I made sure they were invited. The open house was scheduled for a Saturday, the same day, the same hour as their anniversary party the year before. The same party where they had dragged a lawn chair to the trash cans and taped a sign that said, "For losers," with my name practically carved into it. This time the guests were different. No casseroles. No streamers. Just real estate investors in sunglasses, quiet couples with checklists, and a cash buyer from Austin who didn't care about the backstory, just the square footage. I didn't need the money. I just needed the ending. My parents showed up about 20 minutes later. They hadn't seen the listing. They'd just gotten an invitation. I printed it on thick white cardstock with gold trim. Join us for a one-time viewing of the Withrow home now available. They walked up the driveway like it was a joke. Like I was bluffing. But when they saw the agent handing out brochures with interior photos and an asking price in bold at the top, my dad froze. My mother's mouth moved, but nothing came out. You can't do this, he finally said. This is our house. No, I said. It never was. You just squatted in my trust. They followed me like ghosts into the living room. It was already half empty. I'd paid a junk removal company to haul away anything with a memory attached to it. The ugly plaid couch where I slept as a child when relatives came to visit? Gone. The dining room table where they laughed at every job I ever tried to get? Burned. Literally. Ernest helped me set it on fire in a secure pit behind his house. We roasted marshmallows over it. I led them into the kitchen. The paperwork is already filed. The sale closes next week. You have 6 days to find another place. My mom finally snapped. She started begging. Said she didn't know, didn't understand, that they were just scared. She even cried. Real tears, maybe? But it was 20 years too late. You always said I was too soft. I said. You were right. My father tried one last thing. Threatened to sue. Said I falsified everything, that I doctored the documents. But Ernest came prepared. He came in from the hallway and dropped a thick envelope on the kitchen counter. Good luck with that, he said. This is the affidavit confirming the original trust, the revised filings, the timeline of withdrawals. Also, a copy of the hospital chart from 2004. You remember that week, right? They didn't respond. They just stared at the envelope as if it might bite them. The open house ended around noon. By then, the agent had 3 offers in hand. All over asking. One of the buyers stood on the porch looking at the rose bushes as if they were worth more than the house. My parents didn't say anything. They just walked out and got in their car and sat there. I think that's when it finally hit them. That this time no one was going to undo it. No one was coming to save them. Not Grandma. Not Ernest. Not even me. The last I heard, they were living in a motel 2 towns over. The country club had frozen their membership. The IRS was moving forward with an audit. My father's employment contract wasn't renewed. As for me, I didn't keep the house. I signed it over to Ernest a week after the sale. He didn't even move in. He just said he wanted to clean up the mess properly. He donated most of the proceeds to a foundation that helps kids aging out of foster care. Grandma said it best the night it all ended. They thought keeping you was a burden. Turns out it was their last mistake. And that was the last time I saw her. Mini update. About 2 months after the sale, I received a letter. Not a phone call, not an email, an actual letter, handwritten on cheap paper, folded unevenly. No return address. But I recognized the handwriting. It was from my mother. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't apologize. It was mostly a ramble about how hard things had been lately, how they were trying to get back on their feet, how none of it had to happen the way it did. She ended it with a question. Do you think we could meet for coffee sometime? I didn't answer. But I did go out that night, walked down the street to the corner cafe, ordered a coffee, and left it on the table by the window. Black. No cream, no sugar. I sat there for 20 minutes. She never showed up.